In the heart of the American South, there's this incredible story about a man who was, by law, someone else's property. And yet, he held the most powerful people in his entire county completely hostage. This isn't a story about weapons or an uprising. It's about how one enslaved man controlled his masters with nothing more than a secret.
His name was Thomas, and to the people who were terrified of him, he seemed almost otherworldly. They said he could walk past armed guards, through bolted doors, into the most secure homes, and not a single person would dare to stop him. Now, this wasn't magic. The truth was something way more real, and honestly, a whole lot scarier.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth does one enslaved man manage to create this invisible prison of fear for the very people who owned him? Well, the answer is buried in a secret so dangerous it could literally get all of them killed. To really get a grip on Thomas's power, we have to go back to the night it all came out into the open. It all started with a moment of absolute terror for a woman named Elizabeth Hartley. Okay, just picture this for a second. It's the middle of the night, your husband's out of town, every door in your house is locked and bolted, you've got armed guards and hunting dogs patrolling the grounds, and you wake up to a man standing silently at the foot of your bed. This is exactly what happened to Elizabeth Hartley. And the man in her room, it was Thomas, one of her husband's slaves. But he doesn't make a move to hurt her. Nope. Instead, he just places this small, leather-bound journal on her dresser and tells her, simply, to read it. And then he turns around, walks down the main staircase, and strolls right out the front door. That little journal, that was the source of his impossible power. It contained a horrifying, horrifying truth. Elizabeth, as you can imagine, read that journal all through the night. And as she did, the terrible secret that held the entire county hostage was just laid bare page by page. It was a massive crime, and it was orchestrated by the most powerful, most respected men she knew. So to understand just how dangerous this was, you have to know one crucial fact. By 1808, bringing new slaves in from other countries was totally illegal in the United States. It was a federal crime. But here we are, decades later, and a secret group of Georgia's richest and most powerful men were running a massive illegal human trafficking operation. And the journal in Elizabeth's hands? It was the complete, detailed record of their entire conspiracy. And look, we're not talking about some minor offense here. The men involved, and yeah, that included Elizabeth's own husband, were guilty of a capital crime. If this secret ever got out, every last one of them would hang. Period. So why would they take such a huge risk? What could possibly be worth it? Well, the answer was simple. $80,000. That was the profit from one smuggling trip. In the 1840s, that was an absolutely insane amount of money. We're talking millions today. They were willing to risk the gallows for pure, unfiltered greed. And this wasn't just a handful of rogue planters either. No, this conspiracy went all the way to the top. It pulled in the very people whose job it was to uphold the law. We're talking judges, sheriffs, powerful politicians. The whole power structure of the county was completely rotten to its core. So how did Thomas, a man who was himself a victim of this very smuggling ring, turn their own crime into his personal weapon? Well, he built a perfect prison for them. One with no bars, no walls, just pure fear. Honestly, it was a work of absolute genius. You see, because Thomas could read and write, the conspirators foolishly used him as their bookkeeper. Big mistake. Thomas was smarter than they could have ever imagined. For years, he kept a second, secret set of books, a perfect accounting of every single crime. Then he made copies and hid them. And once he had his insurance policy in place, he let the conspirators know, one by one, that their lives were now completely in his hands. And just like that, the entire power dynamic flipped on its head. The men who owned other human beings were now themselves enslaved by their own terror. While Thomas had to endure the daily horror of physical bondage, they lived every single second in fear of a public hanging, of total social ruin, and of seeing their family names destroyed forever. And he made sure they never, ever forgot it. His power wasn't just some vague threat. No, it was a performance. 3 times a week, like clockwork, he would leave his quarters, walk up to the main house of one of the conspirators, walk inside without knocking, and just stand there, in their study, in complete silence. Then he'd turn and leave.
It was a terrifying, constant reminder of who was really in charge. So, for years, this bizarre, silent dance of power went on. But then, the Civil War came, and it changed everything. And it forced Thomas to make a final, profound choice.
With the Union victory, slavery was over. Thomas was finally a free man. The conspirators? They were broken men. Their fortunes were gone, their entire world had been shattered. Now, Thomas held all the cards, and he had the full power of the United States government ready to back him up. His moment for justice, or maybe for revenge, had finally come.
And this is where the story takes its most mind-blowing turn. A Union officer who'd heard whispers about this conspiracy finds Thomas. He asks him directly for the evidence, for the journal that would send his former masters to the gallows. And Thomas says no. He refuses to hand over the records.
I mean, that's the question that hangs over this entire story, isn't it? After everything he'd been through, after being forced to document the enslavement of his own people, after holding the power of life and death over his tormentors for years, why on earth would he choose mercy?
He actually wrote down his reasons later, and his answer, it just reveals so much. He realized that real freedom wasn't about getting even. Getting revenge, he wrote, would just create a whole new set of chains, tying him to them forever. His true liberation came from the choice not to destroy them. That choice to walk away, to build a new life for himself, that was his real freedom. By refusing to bring them down, he finally truly freed himself from their shadow, leaving us all with a pretty profound question. What does justice really look like?